Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second of our Chartered Institute of Housing Vice President webinars. We're very pleased today to welcome Jo Richardson, who's going to essentially go through, tell us a little bit about her background, a little bit about why she wants to be Vice President, and then ascends to the giddy heights of being President of CIH, and also talk a little bit about her priorities for the year should she be elected. For those of you who are listening and who haven't voted, please remember that voting closes at 5 p.m. tomorrow, so get cracking with that. So to get cracking, without further ado, Jo, good afternoon. Would you like to tell us how you got to where you are? I mean, I can see you're in your office. So as an academic, how did your background start in housing and progress?
Yeah, thank you very much, and hello everybody. I came into housing after a passion was fueled in me in 1991. I'm being specific because I remember it well. I volunteered on a homelessness project. I was at school in America for the year, and they do a senior project, and I signed up to volunteer for a month in New York in the spring of 1991, and it just brought it home to me, the importance of secure accommodation, of a home. And I've been very lucky. I've got a secure and settled home and family now, and I've come from that. So it was a really stark contrast to my experience, and it shocked me. So I knew that I wanted to do something related to housing and home. So I came back, did a degree in public administration, and then went on to do postgraduate qualification in housing to get my professional qualification with the Chartered Institute of Housing. And during that, I was a practitioner. So I was a housing assistant for South Holland District Council in Lincolnshire. And there I processed homelessness applications. I learned a bit about managing housing stock, and all the time I was doing my qualifications. So it was a very practical approach. I then went on to be a housing officer in Milton Keynes at Midsummer Housing Association, as it was then, and managed a mixed stock portfolio of 800 properties. So it was very different to my previous role, very much around housing management, antisocial behaviour. It was a generalised housing officer role. So I got to do a bit of everything. And I love talking with people. I love understanding places. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then I saw an opportunity at the Chartered Institute of Housing. And I thought, I'm going to apply because I love the CIH. I want to be part of that. And it was for a part of CIH then known as the Good Practice Unit. I worked there for a little bit under 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, and loved it. It was then the Department of Transport, Local Government and the Regions that had funded a project to go around, visit, get examples of good practice in housing management. So I got to see a huge amount of places, speak to a number of people, officers and tenants, collate those examples and start to write them up in good practice briefings. So my two loves really, talking with people and finding out stuff, and then writing it and sharing it. And that fueled my interest in further research, applied research. So I'm slightly wary of the term academic. I'm extremely proud to be an academic. I'm a professor of housing and social inclusion here at De Montfort University in Leicester, and I still can't believe it. I love it. But I like to apply practical knowledge, and I like to have research with impact that I know is going to make a difference. So I'm not one for writing stuff that's going to sit on the shelf or doing research for the sake purely of endeavour. That's very important. But the way my mind works, I like to know where it's leading, who it's going to help. So that's really how I got here. I've been here at DMU since December 2000. I've had a number of different roles, starting off as manager of what was the Centre for Comparative Housing Research, with the most fantastic mentor and colleague, Dr. Tim Brown. So I learnt the ropes under him and with other colleagues in that centre, teaching on CIH programmes. So over the last 20 years, I've had the privilege of working with my department was tallying it up the other day, and they reckoned around 2,000 people in the housing sector who've gone through DMU and CIH accredited programs, where I've led on programs or taught on them. So I was kind of blown away by that number. But I have thoroughly enjoyed doing that, teaching, research, applying it to practice, talking with people. So that's how I've got where I am sitting today in my office in Leicester at DMU.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Jo. And you've also explained your background with CIH as well, which is
Yeah.
wonderful, of course.
Yeah.
So why do you want to be Vice President?
Well, for a start, it's putting something back in. So I've been part of the CIH East Midlands board on 2 occasions, a couple of years ago, and then right at the start of my time here at DMU. And it's a way of taking that beyond the regional influence, if you like, and being able to put something back into developing who we are as a sector. I mean, my passion is research and teaching, and applying that for the good of housing officers, tenants, people who work and live in housing. So to be Vice President and to work with Aileen Evans, who's going to follow on, I mean, there are some big shoes to fill for anybody who is applying for this role, and there've been some fantastic presidents. I mean, our current president, Jim Strang, and the work that Alison Inman and all of our previous presidents have done. So it's a daunting role, and I really thought about it before I applied, and I thought there are some big shoes to fill, but it's such an exciting opportunity to champion housing, to say this is what our sector can do. I mean, I love the social housing sector. We need to really amplify what the social housing sector can do. So to have that platform, if you like, and to be able to work with the chief executive and the chair and start to develop and amplify our current agenda to further the aims of the Chartered Institute of Housing as a professional body, but as a lobbying platform for a better society. I mean, why wouldn't I want to go for it?
Thank you again. And so drilling down a little bit into what you would do, or almost from day one. I mean, what would your priorities be for your year as Vice President? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity, along with Jim, to write a column for Inside Housing, and I set out a sort of 3-pronged approach to what my priorities would be. Because when I first started thinking about it, and it took me a while to write the column, because I thought there's so much I want to do and so many ways that we can make an impact. But effectively, the Vice President year is supporting the President and supporting the CIH team. And then the President year, it's a year. So there's limited time to really make an impact. So it's important to focus in order to be effective. I am passionate about homelessness. I've already said why that's the case, and I carry on doing that work. I work with a local charity, Action Homeless, and it's such a big issue, and it's a growing issue, and we see the complexity of the issues that arise for individuals, but for society generally, and we need to address this. We don't need to manage homelessness, we need to end homelessness. And I realise that homelessness goes beyond street homelessness, and there is a big issue there with people who are sofa surfing, overcrowded housing, inappropriate housing, and the rest of it, and we absolutely must tackle that. But the visible element that I see when I walk around the city of Leicester and other areas that I visit are people who are street homeless with complex needs, and they are needs that can be addressed if we attend to housing. Housing is the focus here. And if we take a housing first type of approach, I'm not saying there's only one methodological approach to this, but if we take that sort of approach and place ourselves at the heart of it, I think we can end street homelessness in Europe, in the UK. We can do it if CIH places itself in that zone. So I would really want to amplify the role that social housing has and that housing professionals who are members of CIH have in that. And I think this was really highlighted in the fantastic report recently on rethinking allocations. We know what the need is, we know there's a supply issue, but we know what we can do. So that would be priority number one in terms of the influencing policy side of CIH and us all working together. I then got to thinking, well, of course, it's a fantastic lobbying sort of policy influencing theme to the role, but it's really about supporting members, growing membership. Sure, I think that's really important to strengthen the profession, but looking after existing members, which CIH does very, very well, but there's always room for further development, I think, of ourselves as professionals. I'm a real advocate of continual professional development. I just did a postgraduate coaching course myself last year in order to make myself better at my own role. So I'm a real champion of that. And I think we can set out sort of careers plan, if you like, for early housing professionals. So the Rising Stars, the Housing Futures, which is a fantastic forum. I mean, they're really vocal on social media platforms and in professional conversations, roles on boards. I mean, it's brilliant. And it would be lovely to work out where we can have a solid framework, a development framework to help work with colleagues so they can see where their careers plan might lead, both in the housing sector, but importantly, bridging over to other sectors. If we look at health and we look at planning, to get that interdisciplinary flavour. The housing is part of a wider sort of public services network, if you like. Now that's priority number two, working with our colleagues, housing officers, tenants, people who want to develop a career in housing. And then the third priority, Steve, is to grow CIH membership and networks. So I've been very fortunate over my career, particularly my career here at DMU, and also in my role as a trustee at World Habitat, to get to know some brilliant examples across the globe. I've had a visiting fellowship at Swinburne University in Melbourne to do a housing disadvantage project with Indigenous community members. I've travelled to the States. I've revisited the homeless project I was part of when I was doing a visiting lecture at Harvard University there. I have been all over Europe and seen examples where housing disadvantage is overcome, and some really good examples that we can draw from in the future. And I'd love to connect that more, and I would love to work with CIH in all of the devolved countries and in all of the regions. I've had the opportunity to be part of a CIH validation with scope in Hong Kong, where we run a housing pathway for a public administration course. So I've had the fortune to meet CIH members of the Asia Pacific branch. And I would like to make sure that we continue to strengthen those ties, strengthen those networks, because whilst we've got political, social, other contextual differences, I think there is more that connects us than separates us, and we can learn from one another.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Now I'm going to turn over to our attendees and ask any questions. You can unmute yourselves and ask the questions directly to Jo, or you can type your questions, in which case I'll put them to her. So just looking at my dashboard here to find out if anyone has any questions. And I'm guessing that is a no. Apologies, Jo. I think you've answered everybody's questions in advance. Well, look, thank you very much indeed for giving us your time today. If we've got no questions, we'll conclude. I'll conclude by reminding everybody on the call today that voting closes at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and and you can find out everything you need to know about how to vote, as well as see our two candidate statements by looking on our Twitter feed and clicking on the many links that I've been putting up there. And so I think for now, with only a day to go before we before we find out who our new Vice President is. I'm Steve Mee, and I'll say goodbye to you all. And thank you once again, Jo.
Thank you very much. I would be honoured to be Vice President of the CIH and to support Aileen Evans, to support the team, and whoever you vote for, go out and vote. Thank you very much.